Welcome to the Saturday bonus feature of the Daily Dose of Greek, and today we're going to see how Greek matters. Right? Greek matters not only for reading, loving, understanding, and savoring the Greek New Testament, but also being able to be a resource, a reliable resource to others who have questions about what the Bible means. I'm remembering today a gentleman who came to ask me a question. He came by telephone. He called me, someone I didn't know, one of these random telephone calls, and he had an updated version of, I guess, a Bible that he normally read. He had the earlier version and a later version, and the earlier version, I don't remember the verse, but it said someone was doing something, and in the updated version, it said someone was trying to do something. And understandably, this gentleman was quite confused and upset. He said, he thought so they were trying to change the Bible here. And, was it doing or trying to do? Why did they change it? And what I explained to him, and what I want you to have the skills to explain to people who come and ask you questions, is that there's no exact match, is there, between the imperfect tense in Greek and the past progressive in English. It's not like algebra, it's not like 2 equals 2. But instead, the imperfect tense has a range of meaning that does not correspond exactly to the English past progressive. So, for example, if this circle represents the imperfect tense's range of meaning, we could say, well, sometimes, depending on the context, clues the author gives us, it can have a progressive idea, just choosing to paint the action as it's unfolding. Other times, it can focus on the action's beginning and have an inceptive idea. Or it might have an iterative idea, something that's repeated as a customary or habitual action. Or it might have a tendential or conative idea. Right? Those may be terms you're not familiar with, but tendential or conative, the idea of attempting or trying something. So as I explained to this gentleman, apparently the translators of that translation he was looking at, in further studying the specific context of that verse in question, decided that the author had given contextual clues that this imperfect was conveying the idea of attempting or trying, something that an original hearer or reader of that text would have picked up probably unconsciously from those literary clues. But we have to think more deliberately about it because our language doesn't match up exactly with the Greek language. So we want to be able to answer those questions. Think about if you didn't understand that. Someone might bring you the Bible and say, look, they're changing the Bible. You might say, they're changing the Bible. Let's go protest. Let's get our pitchforks and axes and torches and let's go to the publisher, right? So we want to understand these things. So if someone is changing the Bible, if there's a legitimate reason to be concerned, we will be. But when there's not, that we can answer questions and understand what the translators are trying to do, right? So let's look at Galatians 1:13 here, just an example of this conative or tendential imperfect. Just get a little practice reading the Greek here. Ekusata gar tein emein anastrophein pate into Judaismo hati kath hyperbalein ediokan tein ecclesian tu theou kai eporthun autein. So translation, y'all heard, right? You, plural, heard. You notice you have a lengthened initial vowel there. You have a sigma alpha. Of course, if we parse this, it's just an aorist, active, indicative, second person, plural. Paul addressing the Galatians, you as a group, you, plural, have heard. You heard, and there's our post-positive word gar. Remember, it always jumps second in the sentence. In English, we pull that little particle out and put it first. For you heard. And what have they heard of? They've heard of his anastrophein, his way of life. Tein emein anastrophein, my way of life, formerly in Judaism. That kath hyperbalein, right? That kath you recognize is just the preposition kata before a vowel with a rough breathing mark. Remember, if it were smooth breathing, it'd be kat, but it's kath before a vowel with a rough breathing. It's just alternate ways to write the same preposition. Literally, according to surpassingness, right? So beyond measure, incredibly, violently. It's an intensive adverbial idea, right? According to surpassingness, immensely, edikon, I was persecuting. And so we see there the augment. We see the first person singular ending, imperfect, right? So this is just an imperfect, active indicative, first person singular from dioko. I was persecuting. I was persecuting the church of God. Notice there that church is a feminine noun, so later it's replaced with a feminine personal pronoun. We don't say her there, we say it, because in English, a church we don't refer to with feminine pronouns. I was persecuting the church of God, and aporthun, that's from a verb you may not be familiar with, but it's the verb portheo, which means to destroy. And you'll notice it's a contract verb, right, because the last letter of the stem is a contract vowel. You say, what's a contract vowel? Well, it's an omicron, an epsilon, or an alpha. And what happens there, right, the normal imperfect ending is on. It's augmented because it's an imperfect. And that epsilon combines with the omicron. The epsilon and omicron combine then to be un. So the final form is aporthun. And without any further context, aporthun, we would translate that, I was destroying. But from the context of Galatians, we know that Paul does not think he was destroying the church, but he was sure trying, right? He has a much, now, post-conversion, post-Damascus Road, has a much more objective and positive expectation and evaluation of the church's progress in this world. But from now, as he's looking back, he realizes he was persecuting the church immensely, and he was trying to destroy it. Now, that word trying, they were rendering in English, that congative idea, that tendential idea, is determined from the context. That's something that is a possible meaning of the imperfect. And I think it's the right way. You'll notice I have here the NIV translation, and they're rendering it tried to destroy. I think most English translations, if not all, recognize the imperfect carries this congative or tendential idea here. So just arming yourselves with that knowledge so that you can explain translation to other people and also know possible ranges of meaning as you read the Greek New Testament yourself.